welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to episode number 189 of Starting the Conversation. I'm your host, Alice Benham, this week joined again by Lucy Hitchcock, who I'm just going to give you your rough title, is the founder of Sassy Digital and Partner in Wine.
Thanks for having me again.
Great to have you back again.
I love a double podcast guest.
Yeah, she's a return.
I always return on people's podcasts. I don't know why.
I think that must be a good sign.
Yeah, I'm growing.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what it says, isn't it? Is that you've got something new to bring.
I also feel like post-pandemic, I do have something very new to bring.
You absolutely do, which we'll talk a lot about today.
Yeah.
And I think that is pretty much how we met, was through being on each other's podcasts. It's my favourite networking tool. I know we talked before hitting record about how much we both slightly despise networking. Honestly, start a podcast, people. Best networking you'll ever do.
It is, because, it's just one-on-one, isn't it? And you kind of sit down and just have a conversation.
Yeah.
I actually really miss recording my podcast in person. I think the last series that I did was on Zoom, and I was like, nah, not for me. I need to do it in person.
It's nice to be back, and it just makes such a difference, I think, to the episode as well. Like, I don't know if the listeners can tell, but I definitely feel, sounds really lame, but you feel so much more connected to the conversation.
Oh, 100%. And I know I said I don't like networking, but I do I'm very like a sociable person. Like pre-pandemic, I was literally out like every single night a week meeting a different person, just because that's like what I like to do. And Zoom just isn't quite the same.
Not quite the same, is it? You just can't get the vibes.
No,
can't get it. And it's pretty cool. I mean, we were talking before hitting record as well about how, like, can I pick your brain? Can I take you for a coffee thing? Which we'll all have mixed feelings around. But a podcast is basically an excuse to do that.
Yeah.
Like, when else can you invite people who, like, don't really know you, that are probably further along than you, that probably wouldn't give you much of the time of day ordinarily, and be like, oh, can I sit and have a really in-depth conversation with you for an hour and a half? Great.
I give you the time of day.
But yeah, I mean, I less meant I
was like, wow, you're really like blowing smoke up my arse there.
No offence, I'm more meant maybe some of the other guests. But I'm sure I felt that way about you when I first had you on. I feel like now it's maybe more of a mutual thing. But
yeah, I agree. I agree.
Queen Lucy in the building. Maybe I should have brought you some bottled water. You should have given me a rider in advance.
When I asked for water earlier and the guy was like, it's only tap water, I was like, yeah, that's fine.
Well, it must have been his perception of you.
Okay, I'll take it.
She's a bottled gal.
I'm a partner in wine gal.
Very true.
From the tap.
Very
# sustainable.
You've actually got your bottle with you today.
I do. I've got an ice queen and I've got a bottle in my bag.
She's repping.
Yeah.
The biggest brand ambassador should always
be
I
am.
yourself.
I take one out of the house every time I leave the house. Yeah.
Has anyone ever stopped you and been like, oh my gosh, I've got one of those? And then you've gone, it's my company.
Yes, but in a very highly more embarrassing way. I actually get recognised in the street. Yeah.
She's famous.
At least like 5 times. And
a week?
No.
In total?
In total, yeah.
Right.
God, can you imagine?
So 5 times a week, that's quite overwhelming. I wouldn't leave my house.
And the first time it happened, I was like, what? And my best friend was like, oh my God, this is the best thing that's ever happened. And it's still like one of those weird things. People are like, they'll always bring something up. Like I was at the pub the other day with a gin and tonic in my hand. And this girl just slides over to me and she goes, I think that should be a glass of wine. And I was like, what? And she was like, partner in wine. And I was like, oh.
She was so proud of herself.
Yeah, she really was.
I wonder how long she'd thought of that for.
I know.
Do you reckon she'd spotted you and been like, okay, I need a good opener. Right, guys, brainstorm it, workshop it.
Well, I would love to have been there sober to be a fly on the wall, but unfortunately I was I was a few drinks down, let's put it like that.
That's always my fear with meeting people when I'm not aware that I'm meeting people, is that I will disappoint them or just be a completely different version of maybe what they would expect. I have a rule of thumb, which I've completely broken within the last 2 weeks, of not drinking more than 1 drink at networking things, because otherwise I just wake up the next morning and I'm like, I'm not a bad drunk. I'm just always think like, did I hug them a bit too hard? Did I laugh a bit too loud? What stories did I tell? Who bloody knows? I mean, I say that. There's a picture on my Instagram grid of me in Israel last week with a bottle of wine with a straw in it.
Yeah.
So I don't think I really
I did
that
see
one
that.
out.
I was like, yeah, good girl.
I needed a partner in wine, but they didn't have them in Israel.
I feel like it's on brand for me to, be a couple of drinks down, so.
This is true. That is very true. I need to think about that. Like, it's only on brand for me to use stationery.
Also, if people see me, what I was going to say, you should like go out with your stationery like down the street.
Yeah, but it's not quite as cool as being able to just drink wine at any point, is it?
Yeah, I know.
You mentioning being recognised there just reminded me of the only time I've ever thought I was being recognised. I was in a Zara, and it was just before an event that I was speaking at. I think it was in Birmingham, and I was dressed in all black, as I do, and someone started walking straight up to me, and I thought, this is the moment. It was a few years ago, so, you know, the business was quite small, and I was thinking, wow, she's made it. And I thought, you know, the event's nearby, so there's probably people in the area that know who I am, like, this is my time. Turns out they just thought I worked at Zara because I was dressed in all black, and she just wanted to know where the changing rooms were. And honestly, in that moment, it was the biggest reality check I've ever had in my life. It took me down to earth.
That is so good. But have you been recognised since?
Yes, but it's not a valid recognition, because it'll be like
It's
near to an
somewhere-
event that I'm at,
Yeah,
or
okay.
in a business conference. Like, you know, it's never been like on the tube.
Yeah.
So I think that's a proper recognition, isn't it? Like in a pub, there's nothing there that tells you that people should know you.
Yeah.
So props to you, 5 recognitions.
I know.
You keeping a tally?
No, I'd say it's around that. Every time I go out with my boyfriend, he's like, I hope you get recognised today. I'm like, I don't, because I know how much satisfaction that will bring you.
He just loves
He's
it.
literally like, yes.
Does he feel like he's famous by proxy?
No, he just wants to laugh at me.
Oh, okay. Respect that. Big time. He's like, it's not impressive, it's lame. You need those people around you.
Yeah, 100%.
You really do. Like, the people closest to me are not yes people.
Yeah.
They will tell me how it is.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's important. Like, all my friends do the same. My friends will laugh at me as well. I'm like, yeah. Do you know what? It's part and parcel.
Yeah, it's what you need. I just know when I start posting on TikTok, I will get trolled by solely my close friends.
Yeah.
But
But
you've
look,
just
you're
got to
asking
accept
for
that.
it. You're asking for it. I asked for it by posting all these videos on TikTok.
And you sometimes you've got to be the first person that laughs, haven't you?
Yeah.
Like, I am aware this is lame. Let's get over it.
I tell you what, the first time it happened, I was actually like, oh my God, that's really cool. And then I was like, I'm actually a little bit embarrassed. And then the second time I was like, okay, no, this is actually quite embarrassing.
For me, it's any time I'm taking a time lapse of myself in a public space. That feels like a real low in terms of embarrassment.
Oh,
Well,
no.
not even, I don't feel embarrassed. I just think I recognise this is very weird. And
I mean, do you know what? To get the content, I always say to the girls, I'm like, I've got no shame. I have zero
me
shame.
neither.
I'm like, and you've got to have no shame. Just get over it.
Yeah. And you've got to think, I'm never going to see these people again. And what's the worst that will happen? A little thought will go through their head, like, she's a bit weird. Cool.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
And I always say to my friends, when they mock me, I'll be like, well, who paid for your drinks last night?
Well, exactly.
That video. So
Exactly.
you can sit right down.
Yeah, exactly. I always tell clients as well, video absolutely everything, right? And that's kind of what I do. And yeah, it might be a little bit weird. I might walk down the street and be talking to stories and someone walks past me. I'm like, once upon a time I found that embarrassing. But
Yeah.
equally, the videos that I make that go on TikTok, I know how many sales I've made from them. And therefore in my head, it validates it because I'm like,
Yes.
this is how much money doing that makes. So I think we'll continue with it.
Yeah. You can see the purpose, right?
Yeah.
The end destination is worth a little bit of embarrassment going through
Exactly.
it. For context, for people listening, because this will come out in a good few weeks, I've like fresh come off a big networking trip in Israel, so it was like in at the deep end with that whole like meeting new people all of the time. And honestly, one of the biggest things I've taken from it is that you have to practice introducing yourself. I just think, oh yeah, it's just introducing myself. Like, you know, if I practice it, it's not going to be natural. If I have a script, like, that's going to sound weird. But the more that I was trying to introduce myself and completely failing, and honestly seeing the life behind people's eyes just slowly fading away whilst I was rambling and confusing them about what I actually did, and I heard all these other people introducing themselves so succinctly and so clearly, I was like, gosh, like, it is a skill, but you've got to do it to get good at it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that was a very formative experience in
It was.
maybe realising what not to do to learn what to do.
Agreed. And I think in terms of introducing yourself, it is one of those things that takes practice, isn't it? And I always, when I introduce myself, I always do this, like, I guess I like to call it an elevator pitch, but it's not. I think this is because a lot of people actually feel very nervous about talking about themselves.
Yeah.
And secondly, when you go to open your mouth to say, what do, you kind of panic and go, I don't want to sell myself because it doesn't feel natural to me. When actually you're not selling yourself, really, you're just introducing yourself.
Yeah.
And if you can do it in a confident way, you're kind of selling yourself anyway. So I like to follow a format of like, who are you? What do you do? What's your business? What do you do? And why do you do it? That's the way you kind of like, well, that's the way I apply it to both of my businesses. Depending on where I am, I will
Yes.
introduce myself differently.
And that I found has been a real realization for me, and this leads us in nicely into talking about you having 2 businesses, because both of us are sat here with 2 different things that we do, those 2 things being pretty different from each other, very different off, as in like not what you and I have, as in both of our businesses operate quite differently. And I, for a while, was always trying to introduce like everything I did. So, you know, I'm a business and marketing strategist, and I host a podcast, and I do retreats, and I've got this other business. And I've really realized over time, like, cater your introduction depending on where you are. Like, some rooms that I'm in, all I am is a podcast host, or all I do is run on paper, a stationery brand. And that was a real realization for me as well of like, okay, you don't have to say everything. Like, be strategic. What's going to make most sense in the room that you're in?
I try to have like an intro that kind of encapsulates everything that I do, but I will tell it as more of a story because that kind of like gets people involved, right? But I'll tell you in a second exactly what I say. Introducing yourself when you have two businesses. At the beginning, you think people must think I'm a lunatic, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yes.
When actually I'm like, no, I'm a master of all trades.
I'm actually
How can I make you believe that? That was like kind of my main worry when I started Partner in Wine was, are people going to think, why are you doing something else? Are you not good enough at that?
Yes.
Or do you not have enough work with that? And it's like, no, I'm doing this because I really want to do it. That's the only reason. And then, you know, it turns out actually I'm quite good at that. And then people are like, well, what? So why are you doing that still? Are you not good enough at this? So it's kind of one of those like balancing acts when actually, you know, each of them are standalone businesses on their own.
Yeah.
And I still can't let go of Sassy because I have this like weird innate need to help people. So yeah, when I introduce myself, I will say, I'll be like, my name's Lucy, I'm the founder of Sassy Digital and Partner in Wine. And Sassy Digital is a no-nonsense marketing, branding and digital marketing agency in inverted commas for all businesses, but mainly kind of working in the e-com space. And then I'll proceed to go into, and actually I am the founder of Partner in Wine as well, which is what I like to describe as my best case study, everything that I would do with a client to kind of get them to where they need to be. And then people go, oh, that's really interesting. Also, what makes Partner in Wine special? And then I'm like, well, actually, you know, we've got X amount of followers and engaged community, and we're stocked in Selfridges, Liberty London, Urban Outfitters, blah, blah, blah. And then people are like, oh, wow, okay. So you do know what you're talking about. So it kind of like complements each other.
Yes.
But
because one is proof of the other. And I have it in a similar way where it's like, well, when your services are helping businesses and you have another business that's like product based, like you said, it's the biggest test of whether what you do actually works. Last time we came on the podcast, you had one business. You founded Sassy Digital in 2015. You're now sat here with two businesses. You started Partner in Wine in 2020. You mentioned a little bit there, kind of those hesitations of, oh gosh, what are people going to think? And how's this going to look to start another business? Tell us, obviously I know the kind of backstory of Partner in Wine, like you saw a very specific need, you had a desire to bring a solution to that problem. But in terms of like actually deciding to start a second business, when you've got a first business that's already pretty demanding and thriving, what was that decision like?
To be honest with you, it wasn't really a decision that was like, oh, shall I, shan't I? It just kind of like happened. And then I got so far down the road, I was like, well, it's happening.
Yes.
I can't stop it. It was like, oh, it's happening. Okay, great. And I'm now sat in my parents' front room packing orders. That's kind of, and I know that sounds really weird because I know a lot of the time with people's businesses, and especially the people that I work with, fashion businesses, for example, you know, it takes years to think of the idea and then get your sampling together and tweaking and setting up your website if it's a new business, setting up your branding, trademarks. There's so many elements that can kind of come into it. But because I do it for other people, it was very much like it doesn't matter about the branding because literally I can get that done in an hour. You know, with the website and everything like that, it just kind of happened because I knew how to do it. And so I don't think there was any reservations there because firstly, like cost barrier for marketing, website, branding is a huge startup cost, right? Which I didn't have because I just did it in-house. The thing that I found challenging was the sampling, the product.
Yeah.
Like it's not for me, logistics, but I just love wine. So
whatever
the
takes.
testing process was great because
I can imagine. There's definitely some benefits, aren't there, to starting a second business when you kind of already know a lot of the stuff already. I found that, like, when people would say, like, oh my gosh, like, you started it in 5 weeks. I'm like, that is not valid
normal.
to expect of any. Yeah, it's not, because we have the skill set and the network. And I think also the kind of confidence, which you can't learn. You just have to acquire it, to kind of just trust yourself and go for it. And I really resonate with that, like, you just fall in love with the idea so much that it's less of a, oh, I'm going to sit down and decide to start a business, and more like, okay, this kind of baby that I didn't really know I wanted is now here and I need to look after it. Okay, cool. How are we going to figure this out? Yeah,
exactly. And also, it's one of those weird things, isn't it? When people go, oh, how did you start a business? Why did you decide to start it? And anyone that started a business through like, I don't know, a passion of theirs. So if I'd have started a football business, I probably wouldn't feel very passionate about it because I don't understand football. It's not that I don't like it. I just don't understand it. I'm not interested in it. It's not for me. But I would find it very difficult to, if I'd found a niche somehow in football, to go and start a business doing that, because I can't test it out. I don't know anything about it. Whereas like with wine, I'm like, yes, the summer, like, let's pop the corks, like, amazing, you know? So if you don't feel passionate about and I hate the word passionate because it's the type of thing people write on a cover letter, and actually I'm like, are you that passionate about it? But when you actually like, you get it in your soul and you're like, this is great, love this for me, this is going to be so cool, let's see where it goes. When you're starting a business like that, that is the best possible way that you can start it, because it's growing out of something that you're actually interested in, and you know you're not going to fall out of love with it because that is one of your interests. And not everyone, to be fair to them, can actually do that. You know, a lot of people start, I don't know, I use fashion brands as an example. A lot of people start fashion brands out of like a gap that they've spotted or something that they kind of need. But then, you know, I've seen people who have like continued through the sampling process and really like broken through those barriers despite, you know, lots of kind of hardships they faced. But then other people have gone, do you know what? I'm not really that bothered about it anymore. I think it's hard when you sit down and go, okay, I want to start a business. You can't just decide. Like, the idea has to decide for you.
Yes, completely. And if you sit for hours and try and come up with the right idea, chances are it's not going to be the right idea because you're not going to feel passionate about it. It's not going to feel aligned. Like, every business has that seed, doesn't it, of some idea or some moment that sparks everything.
Yeah.
What were the early days of Partner in Wine like, you know, in terms of suddenly now having two businesses to run? What did that look like?
Okay, so just for perspective here, at the time I had Becky working for me, who now works for me full time. She was working for me on her placement year during the pandemic. Was like, oh no, how's this going to play out? So she was then working for me a bit less, so kind of like part-time, maybe 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week, which actually was kind of unwarranted because everyone went to go online during the pandemic. So I actually doubled my prices and started making a lot more because people needed the help. So I was sat at my parents' kitchen table, which is where I was living at the time. My dad was sat opposite me pre-retirement, and we'd kind of just sit there and he'd be like, what are you working on today? I'd be like, oh, you know, what I'm working on today. What are you working on today? So I actually had quite a nice time. And then my mum would be kind of in the background like, oh, what's everyone doing today?
She was like the office manager.
Yeah, she's the office manager.
Anyone want a tea?
Shout out to Jill. Yeah, exactly. So no, I had a really, I'm very fortunate that I had quite a nice supportive setup when I was starting the business. And actually, one thing I will say is I don't actually think when you start a business, you should ask everyone what they think, because I'm very lucky because my friends are very supportive. And if I say I'm going to do something, they're like, oh my God, cool, like go for it. Yeah. But I do know a lot of other people whose friends would be like, oh, do you think that's a good idea because of X, Y, and Z? I think you should maybe only tell a few people what you're doing and then go from there. When I told my dad, he was like, that's a well good idea. He was like, great, go for it. So we'd kind of sit there at the kitchen table and I'd be like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And actually, like, in the idea, because I already know, I mean, my dad supports me anyway, but like, because he was supportive of the idea, asking him for his opinion was kind of very valued in the like sampling process and whatever. And I also obviously told my best friend Maddie, who loves wine as much as I do, so she was very supportive in that as well. But whereas if you open it up to like a kind of wider network of people, I think you'll get some answers which you potentially don't want. And actually, not everyone has an entrepreneurial mind. Yeah. And if you are the one that's running the business and it's your idea and you think this is the way to go, then go with that, not other people's doubts.
Because so often their response is coming from their own fears and feelings rather than actually anything to do with what you've shared. They're just thinking, oh gosh, I wouldn't do that. Yeah. So don't do it. That's really scary. Yeah. No, that's good advice. And I guess a nice, like you were saying, a good position to start that new business from is to have that good support network around you. Yeah. How have you managed to run two businesses side by side? Like, I am asking this question for me fully, not even the listeners. Sorry, listeners, I hope you find this answer valuable too. But, you know, I've found it, and I'm being very honest about it, like really difficult to manage two businesses. You know, we're in the same boat. You've got one service, you've got one product. They operate in very different ways. It's double the social medias. You know, I've not been able to handle it to the point where I've kind of let on paper sit until September, and then I'm picking it back up. But even then I'm like, oh gosh, how am I going to manage to at the same time? How have you found that, having two businesses at once?
Okay, I've got two answers here.
Okay.
Because one is an early answer and one is a now answer.
Great, let's have them both.
So the best piece of advice, well, one of the best pieces of advice that I've been given is to accept help when you need it. And what I mean by that is, okay, thinking, I need some help. I'm going to have to pay for it. Maybe I can't necessarily afford all the things that I want help with, but this is the one thing that I really do need help with right now because I am putting too much time into it. So the very first thing in Sassy that I did that with was getting a bookkeeper and accountant.
Yeah.
I mean, you need an accountant anyway, but getting a bookkeeper, because I was just stressing and spending like evenings filing through receipts, looking at my accounting software like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to do it wrong. I'm going to get in trouble. So that was one of the very first things that I did. I also had placement students. This was when I lived in Bournemouth. I had, every year I took on a placement student from the university. So they would kind of help with various different client related things. And then when I moved up to London, I had 2 team members last year working on Sassy and 1 full-time on Partner in Wine. So I did last year there was 4 of us in the team, which is a lot. Now it's just Becky and I on Sassy and Annie, who is my full-time marketing exec on Partner in Wine, and they kind of both help me like really, really very heavily with client-based stuff on Sassy, and Annie in terms of like the marketing, actually like the doing, working with corporate clients, etc. There's a lot of different things that go into it. Then aside from that, I had a lot full-time employees. I had a lot of assistants. So I've got a VA, Meg. Anyone who's thinking about getting a VA, 100% do it. Was just like the best thing I've ever done, because she just helps with she doesn't help with my diary and stuff like that, but she helps with a lot of admin stuff, which is again where I am not great. So she kind of helps with a lot of that. And then in terms of Partner in Wine, I actually packed boxes from July until December 2020. Yeah. And then it got to the end of December and I was like, no, I can't do it anymore. I'm up from 6 till 9, packing boxes, going to the post office, 9 till 6, 7 o'clock working with clients on my own all day. And then in the evenings, again, from 7 sometimes until 1 in the morning, that was at Christmas time, was a very stressful time for me. Packing boxes,
I can imagine,
ready to take to the post office the next day. And then it starts again. Yeah. So that was I look back on it and like I've got PTSD. I've got like cardboard boxes floating around my head here like a halo.
Paper cuts everywhere.
Literally paper cuts everywhere. I needed to do it because I am one of those people that thinks I really believe that everyone should do everything they possibly can in their business to experience what it's like, purely for the gratitude that you give to someone else when they take it over for you.
And also to get to know the task itself. Like, it scares me, the thought of me not knowing something that needs to happen. It's fine if I'm not the one doing it, but I know if my podcast producer were to, touch a lot of wood here, not be able to edit a podcast one week, I know how to edit a podcast. Yeah. There's nothing that I'm not aware of how to do it. People can do it better than me, quicker than me. But no, that's true as well. I hadn't thought of it in that way of like, it makes you more grateful.
It really does. And equally, like, so for example, if my fulfillment center, has human error and sends out the wrong color bottle, I've done that before. So I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. But it is what it is, Yeah. Or I don't know, something else happens. I'm like, I understand. And my manager at my fulfillment center is like, she's like, it's okay, you can shout at me if you want. I'm like, I don't want to.
Oh, bless her.
I don't. It just really actually doesn't. I mean, I'm not an angry person anyway, but it really doesn't bother me. I've been there. No. It's human error.
And I always think with that kind of topic as well of like, sweating the small stuff and getting angry about things, the only person that really affects is you. Like, it's just, I honestly think business is 10 times easier when you just get over a lot of stuff. Yeah. And you just go, all right, cool, is what it is.
I also think,
let's move on.
I also think, and this kind of, I mean, this is a side topic, but I also think I'm very conscious of how, when I'm no longer here, I always think, well, how would I want people to describe me? Or how would I want people to talk about me when I'm not in the room? And actually, I think and as I said again, I've never been an angry person. I've never been an argumentative person. I don't like conflict. But equally, I think the way that you deal with stuff in business, especially as a woman, pre our generation, perhaps women had to be a bit more bullshit to get what they wanted. But actually, nowadays, I find that if the kinder you are, or the more understanding you are, or the way that you deal with people in business, the better people will kind of remember you and actually refer you to other people and go, do you know what? She was really great to work with, like very kind, gave more than she should have done, but actually did a good job as well, you know?
Yes. I think kindness is one of the most underrated strategies to growing a business. And obviously it's not a strategy because you don't want to be doing it for the wrong reasons, but like just be a good person, and it will get you so far. I'm interested then, kind of practically, obviously that's how you're kind of running both businesses at once. What about the more kind of mental side of it? Because I feel like that's just as exhausting as the extra workload. Like you basically have two different sides to your brain. Like, do you have set days where you work on each business? Is it kind of about strict boundaries for you? Like, how do you manage?
So this is kind of more my now answer to the last question. I balance it as and when, and I think that's because I'm delegating a lot of things. So if something comes in, I'm like, right, I today need to work on this with Annie on Partner in Wine. Becky, can you work on this with that client? Or, you know, any freelancers we're working with or whatever, you know, they can handle that. I just need to manage it. Or perhaps Becky, you can take over managing that today while I work on this. In terms of like mentally, I often get quite guilty and feel quite bad when I'm working on one business.
Yes.
While if I'm working on Sassy and we've got a massive client launch, which quite often happens, I will tend to ignore Partner in Wine, even though Annie might need my help. So in terms of, and vice versa as well. But in terms of managing that, I think I've done it before and gone, well, I really didn't handle that well. Or I need to give this person more of my time. You know, the greatest gift you can actually give your employees is your time. Another great piece of advice someone else gave me.
Nice. Just spitting wisdom today, Lucy.
I know. And I always remember that because I do think part of being kind is actually teaching people the way to do things, or giving them your time. Well, obviously giving them your time, but like giving them your advice, or what do you want to do about this? Or do you think this is a good idea? Especially when people are working for you to make your life easier. You could, by making their life easier, it does make your life easier as well. So I'm trying to be more conscious of that.
It's a constant work in progress.
It really is.
Managing people.
It really is.
But do you know what? That's refreshing to hear, and I know a lot of listeners will find it refreshing too. Like just acknowledging it is difficult, and you do kind of feel that guilt either way. And I feel like that isn't just in the context of running two businesses. You know, for working parents, I hear people talk about it a lot of like, you know, when you're with your kids, you feel bad you're not working on your business, and vice versa. Or even like for your personal life, like when I'm relaxing, I'm like, oh, should be doing that work thing. Or when I'm working, I'm like, oh, should be having a more relaxing. Like, I guess it's almost accepting. Like I definitely know I'm in a season right now of just accepting the chaos slightly. And just being like, do you know what? A full life and a fulfilling life somewhat comes with a little bit of chaos. Yeah,
and also you'll go through like ebbs and flows of it happening. I mean, I very much used to work. I used to literally work all the time. I used to work all the time. I used to work on holiday. I used to manage people's social media and sit there on holiday.
Yeah. Oh my God, shout out to the social media managers. I used to do the same job. It is.
I mean, it's a lot.
Thankless.
I mean, now I obviously do it for my own company and I don't find that stressful, but like...
Yeah, but it's different.
It is different. And I used to work all the time, and actually got to the pandemic. I accept that I've earned this and I shall not work all the time. And I now have very clear boundaries. I've done the hustle for both businesses. I've done it. I've been there. I'm due my time off. I really am.
And it's seasons, isn't it? And it's seeing it that, like you said, that like... that first push, it's kind of fun though, isn't it? Like, you know, I know you look back on those long days and it's a bit of like, oh, gosh, that was intense, but you know it has a purpose, and it's like, okay, if we get this off the ground, the analogy I always love to use is, and I still don't know if it's a true fact, I cannot Google it for the life of me, but it's a good analogy, so I'm just going to keep running with it, is that aeroplanes use 80% of their fuel just to take off, and then they use 20% for the rest of the journey. And I feel like that's a great analogy for business, of like that first push takes so much from you, and building that momentum is exhausting. But once you're there, you then get that season of coasting.
80-20 rules, just so applicable to everything.
Right? I mean, it doesn't sound correct. Like, I'm a bit concerned if I'm on an aeroplane if there's only 20% of the fuel left and we're like 2 minutes into the journey. But I don't know, any pilots listening want to back that up for me? Let me know.
Yeah, shout out.
Right, TikTok. I couldn't have you on the podcast and not talk about TikTok. So obviously you've talked a bit about the early days of Partner in Wine. TikTok has played a massive role in growing that business to what it is now. When did that all begin?
I mean, do you know what? I've never actually experienced anything quite like it. Do you remember when people go like, do you remember the early adopters of Instagram? You know, we have like the influencers who've been around forever because they adopted it early. They kind of like they created influencers, the whole lot of them. And there's a really weird, I don't know the exact statistic, but there is a obscene amount of people on Instagram who have over 1 million followers. It's one of those things that Instagram like absolutely love it, and I will always post on it, and I have like such a lovely, I feel like there's a really nice community of people on there. Like we kind of talk on there. I think there's a massive like network of women in business who are on there, and you
feels like a network. That's a good way of putting it.
Keep up, follow along. And in terms of networking, I like networking on Instagram. You know, I like meeting people in person. There's nothing quite like an Instagram friend that you've never met, as they say.
I love it when you meet someone at an event or you bump into them and you're like, how's your dog? How was your mum's recent holiday? And you're like, we've never met before, but I know so much about your life.
I haven't met IRL. So yeah, absolutely love Instagram. And that's where I started Partner in Wine. I basically started, when I began the business, I started documenting the process on my personal Instagram. Hadn't told anyone the name, had reserved their handle, whatever, hadn't told anyone about it, was not sending people over there. I solely had been talking about it on my personal Instagram. During lockdown, well, it wasn't actually, it was just as lockdown ended, but like still we had a lot of restrictions. People were still kind of like, you know, online shopping and browsing or whatever. And I actually got followers from talking about my business journey, because people were like, oh, you know, have you seen this girl? She's doing something, she's starting a business, but she's not telling anyone what it is. So I'd started doing that, and it kind of had like built up from them. Even my friends were like, what the hell are you doing? And I hadn't told like half of my friends. There were only like a handful of people that knew exactly what I was doing.
I love that.
And I was kind of like, oh God, you know what? There's really something to be said about the kind of like mystery element of starting a business. And I get it if you're starting from scratch and you're kind of just posting on your, I don't know, personal Instagram where you've got 300 followers or whatever and they're all your friends. But equally, you've got to start somewhere. And actually the main people that are going to be buying from you when you first start a business are your friends and family. That's kind of how I started it. Then 2 weeks before I launched, I basically put up a post saying I'm launching in 2 weeks. My business is called Partner in Wine, and then put the handle up. And I think by the time I launched, I had 300 followers, and I was like chuffed with that. I was like, yeah, great. Because I know all 300 of these people are really invested in the journey. And I was like, okay, think about it. You know, I'd love to have 10,000 followers of engaged people, whatever, you know. But actually to me, it was more about the sales that I was going to make. When I launched the business, followers don't mean anything. When I launched, I had a really successful launch, and I was like, this is a prime example of people were thinking I need 10,000 followers to have a successful business.
Yeah.
I know that's not the case anyway, because I don't have 10,000 followers personally or on Sassy, but with this, it just felt like a really like solidified version of that.
Yeah.
Because it was so condensed. So was working on my Instagram, you know, posting all the stuff, was always doing like behind the scenes on stories, unboxings and packing orders, and literally showing people how much work I was putting into it. Then I moved to a fulfillment center. And I always tell the story like, thank goodness I did, because honestly, if I hadn't and I'd started TikTok, I would have been in a world of trouble.
Yeah.
So I did a giveaway in January with Mirabeau, which is like my all-time like favorite wine brand, and overnight I got like 3,000 followers, and I was like, yeah, okay, great. Like more people are finding out. It's a relevant audience because they like wine, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Had, you know, some orders off the back of that, and then had several kind of like press articles, and I was like, okay, this is going really well. Like I think this is, you know, this is good. And I just had like my first 5-figure month, and I was like, right, really keen to sustain this. Over Christmas I'd been looking at TikTok, and I've been thinking, right, this is really interesting because it's in its very early stages. I know a lot of businesses that have gone viral. I'm watching, I'm observing here. I really want to understand how it works, because I don't want to start doing something and feel and kind of then not know what I'm doing and not post for a while. Or I don't know. I felt like I really needed some time to have a think about it and really like reflect on what it was that was going to be different about that to Instagram.
Yeah.
Or how they would complement each other. And I thought, you know what? Great way of starting this. I'm going to tell my story, because people love stories. People have loved my story to date. I've got a great story. Like this is, you know, this is good. So I spent about 4 hours making this video. So just by the way, anyone starting TikTok going, I can't use this app, I'm too old, I don't know how to use it, I've never used it before.
Yeah.
Or you spend hours making a video and you're like, does it really take this long? It gets easier. It gets easier. I wanted to throw my phone out the window. I was like, no. Do you know what? Screw this. I was like, I'm done. I'm just posting it now. It's done. And I posted maybe like, I don't know how many videos, maybe like 10 videos before this. just kind of like experimenting, seeing how it all works, seeing what didn't work. And I was like, right, I'm really going to put all into this video. And after 4 hours, I was like, nah, no, absolutely not. I'm done. This is too much.
My all has been reached.
Yeah, my all has been reached. This is it. You know, let's see what happens. So I posted it about 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, and then forgot about it completely. And I mean, actually, genuinely, I forgot I was on TikTok because I was off in my Instagram world by that point. And I had my friend over in the evening. I'd had a few more sales, you know, than usual that day, but like nothing to sort of, you know, just sometimes that happens. Then I woke up the next morning at 7:30 and I looked at my phone and the notifications on Shopify were like this, you know, scrolling. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I must have signed into one of my, you know, influencer client Shopify's account. And I was looking at the amounts and I was like, no, that is the amount of a bottle plus shipping. That is the amount of one bottle plus 2 tumblers and shipping. And I was like, this is weird. And then I logged into my store and at 7:30 in the morning, I'd already made like £2,000 or whatever it was. And I was like, okay, something weird is happening here. Went into Instagram, had reached 10,000 followers, had loads more followers, but nothing had been posted. And I was like, this is really bizarre. And I was like, okay, I'm going to look at my analytics. And because TikTok and Shopify at the time didn't have a connection, it wasn't showing where the traffic was coming from. Right. I could just see that there was 200 people on my website and like X amount checking out. And I was just like, I called my mum and I was like, Mum, I don't know what's happening here. And she was like, well, have you done anything differently? And I was like, oh my goodness, that thing where people post on TikTok and they go viral and they make sales. I was like, maybe that's happening to me. And I logged into TikTok, and as I scrolled on that video, it was going up by tens of thousands of views at a time. So when I logged in, it had 190,000 views. And by the end of the day, it had 800,000 views. And I know a lot of people who have gone viral and haven't actually made sales from it. And I know equally people who have gone viral and made sales from it. This was just like wild. I mean, people WhatsApping me going, my friends are talking about this partner and wine thing in WhatsApp group, and I'm like, that's my friend. Like, it was just like, it was kicking off like on all levels. The lady from my fulfillment center was like, oh my gosh, like we can't process these all today. You know, I had before where I had 200 orders in a month, I had over 400 orders in one single day, which was just like absolutely bonkers. So it really was wild, but also this is still happening. It's so easy to be discovered on TikTok versus Instagram because the way that, and I bloody hate the algorithm, but I hate presuming and talking about it because I just think put that to one side and like, you know, stay in your lane and work on what you're actually saying. But anyway.
Yeah. Talk about the solution, not the problem. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's not complain about it.
Don't get us anywhere.
Oh God. Anyway, don't get me started on that.
Yeah, I know. We've TikTok.
So yeah, TikTok, very, very good way of being discovered because who you're following doesn't necessarily come up on your For You page. Yes, people you are following do come up on your For You page, but I mostly sit there and scroll through people that I'm not following because I want to see like new things. I want to be entertained. I want to be inspired, you know? So yeah, it's a really, really great place. If you are new to business or you have a new business or you're new to the platform even, it's a great way of being discovered. And that is kind of like the be all and end all of it versus Instagram where people are begging to have chronological feed and they want to just see the people they followed. They don't want to see other things, you know? We're not open to it over here, but over here we are open to it.
So true. And I'm actually finding myself not enjoying the TikToks that are from people I know. I that's just as you're saying it, I can recognize that. Like I go to TikTok wanting to see something new, something different. I go to Instagram wanting to feel kind of at home. Yeah. And actually at the event that I was at last week, there were some guys from TikTok there and I saw their name badges and I was like, I am going to come and talk to you. Thank you very much. I love that. And they said exactly what you said there. They were like, see it, that TikTok is where people discover you. And then Instagram can be where they stay connected and where you build a relationship. Because I think that's one of the question marks people can have with any new platform is, well, how does it fit in? And that's great to see it, you know, basically what everyone's moaning about on the other platforms, which is a lack of exposure. TikTok can bring that.
Yeah, so TikTok has actually taught me a lot about Instagram. And I'm now very fussy about what I post on Instagram. I don't like posting random posts that are like, I don't know, a picture of a white bottle that says a very unmeaningful caption about hot girl summer, cool wine summer, or whatever it is. Like, I tried it back in the day.
Cool girls love cool wine.
Yeah, so, yeah, you know, something like that. Yeah.
Get me that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, gorgeous girls drink wine from a partner in wine bottle. I like to write I like to put things up and then talk about something that's happening or spark some kind of like emotion from people. And I know there's a massive community on the Partner in Wine Instagram who are really like, they love it. They're really rooting for me. They want to see what I'm doing with the business or like what I've been up to with my partner in wine, you know? And I've kind of come to terms with the fact that I am the face of my own brand, but that's to a benefit, you know? I will post on there so last week we launched in Liberty London, and I always know that these posts are going to do really, really well, and people are literally going to be like, oh my gosh, yes, this is the best thing ever, because they've seen the journey.
Yeah,
so
they're your people.
Exactly, and people will watch the journey on TikTok, and yes, okay, I will duplicate some videos from TikTok to Instagram just to kind of like save a bit of time, but I also will make content for TikTok, specifically for TikTok. I will make TikToks for TikTok and Instagram, and I will also make reels just for Instagram that are not appropriate for TikTok. It's really taught me a lot about content creation and actually made me better at my own job at Sassy.
Yeah.
Because I now understand that different places require different content. And also, you know, things might be trending on TikTok that are not trending on Instagram, or, you know, things are too silly for Instagram that are on TikTok. I like to use this one example, and I'll round this answer off here, but there's a TikTok where this girl like walks into a room and she's like, when you go back onto Instagram versus being on TikTok, and she opens the door and she goes, you guys are really boring, and then closes the door and walks out.
Well, the running joke for me is that reels are just like 2 weeks behind on TikTok.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
My friends that don't use TikTok will send me a reel they think is really funny, and I'm like, that trend was like 3 weeks ago. Like,
yeah, that's not
so
funny
sorry.
anymore.
That was so April 2022. But I think that's great you say that, because it just proves again the best way to learn is by doing. And like you said, you've learned how to use the platform best just by giving it a go, and you didn't smash it from day one. You have to
100%.
do it to get good at it.
And also persevere. I know loads of people who haven't had that viral break yet, but you will get there. You just need to get into the flow of it.
Are you ready for some TikTok quickfire Q&A?
Yes.
To round us off?
Yes.
It's probably not going to be quickfire,
okay.
So we'll just have a bit of a chat. First question, is it too late? Because I feel like there can be that feeling, just as you were saying earlier, where it's like, TikTok was in its infancy, like, oh, you should have jumped on it earlier. And, you know, people can feel regret or shame, or like, oh, well, it's not worth it now because now it's getting saturated. Is it too late to jump on the platform and see success?
As I said earlier, best place to be discovered. It's not oversaturated. Also, the way that it shows you content means that it shows you content that you're interested in. I mean, no two people's FYP will be the same. My little brother's is like weird jokes that he gets involved with. Mine's like small businesses and I don't know, whatever else pops up on there. No, I don't think it's too late. I also, last year when I went viral, loads of people joined that were following me on Instagram because I was like, oh my gosh. And, you know, everyone watched this whole thing unfold and was like, this is amazing, I'm going to join. And I actually find it quite funny because this was in March last year. And now I look on Instagram and I, you know, follow a lot of people and they're like, guys, now is the time to join TikTok. And I'm like, no, actually last year was the time to join TikTok. But yes, now still is the time to join TikTok. I mean, you know, people's followings are growing and growing. I think you just need to ask yourself whether you can dedicate the time to doing it, because it does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to get used to it. But actually, I would probably say doing that is more worth it than doing Instagram.
Interesting.
Because you're going to get more website traffic from TikTok and in the long run make more sales from TikTok. But it's also going to inform what you're posting on Instagram.
Yeah.
Where the platform is becoming more similar in a way.
Well, that leads nicely into my next question, because I think that can be another hesitation for people is time. You know, as business owners, we're already all feeling, I think, stretched. How do you make the time for that as a new platform? And I guess how can you save time but still be consistent with it? So
TikTok's not as polished as Instagram. I honestly wouldn't fuss about the quality of the content, right? As long as it hits where it needs to hit. You know, there is some piece of content I'll take longer over. For example, I will try to post, haven't done it recently, but a story a week, as in like the story of my business from a different angle, right? So those take slightly longer. It's the trending stuff that you can literally pick up your phone and film a video in like a minute. I mean, we've got a trend report at Sassy that we send out for free every single Monday, right? And it's got a list of everything that's trending, that has trended over the weekend or started to trend, and so that people can try it. And I will often use those links as a tool for myself to then go and create content off the back of it. So when I'm creating content for TikTok, I will have a list of about 20 sounds that I'm going to make, and I will make them as I go, as the week goes on. And then there will be some separate stuff that is more strategic. That's like, you know, National Rosé Day is coming up. So there's a few different things that we want to film for that, because I know that they're appropriate for TikTok and people will enjoy them. The kind of more trending stuff, you can very quickly fire them out, and I can film maybe like 20 videos in an hour. So really it's just a case of putting aside half a day a week, or, you know, even 1 hour one afternoon at 4 o'clock, now that the sun's out for that long. Just putting that time aside and going, this is a list of what I'm going to film. I'm going to film it now in the app because it's part of the trending sound. That's it. It's done. It's there for when I need to post it, and you've got, you know, content to fire out.
And just as you were saying earlier, if people are listening to that and thinking, where am I going to find that time from? Like, take it from the platforms that maybe aren't performing as well for you as they used to. Like, it doesn't have to be about finding more time for marketing. Actually decrease your time in areas where it's maybe not being as fruitful.
Also, stop mindlessly scrolling on Instagram.
Mine's TikTok, honestly. I'm really closely considering getting a work phone. And I'm just so bad. I just scroll for hours.
You're observing. You're allowed to.
Yeah, it's research.
It's research.
It's really specific research. Yes. Thank you. That's my excuse all the time. I promise at one point I am going to get out of the research phase and actually start doing it.
Yes, please do.
Do you know what my accountability will be? When this episode goes live, I'll have already started on TikTok.
Okay, great. If you don't, you know what's going to happen.
I know. And do you know what the big thing I keep, and you know, it's so funny, like I see it with clients all the time. You pretend there's a big thing you need to figure out in order to start. And the thing I keep thinking is like, what should my first one be? Like, I've got so many ideas for videos, but like, and I'm like, Alice, you know, when you really, literally doesn't matter. Like I cannot reiterate to myself how little it matters, but I'm using that as my excuse. I'm like, well, I don't know what my first one would be. But anyway, gonna practice what I preach. Third and final question.
Yeah.
Biggest mistake you see people making on TikTok / the one tip you would like to leave people with if they are going to go and master their TikTok strategy off the back of this episode? What should they be doing?
The biggest mistake I see people making is being too niche.
Interesting.
So being very, very niche. Like, okay, let's make a niche joke about me downing a bottle of wine. It's not that niche. Everyone loves a drink, right? Something that is niche is, I see a lot with candle companies. There is some very kind of niche, specific, like customer-based jokes that I see, and I'm like, if you want, or like small business jokes, right?
Yes.
Okay, I get it. There's a small business community. Small businesses are going to buy your products. And listen, when people say like, don't use the hashtag small business because only small businesses are going to see your post, I hashtagged small business on that viral video. So I'm just like, digital marketing experts on TikTok going, don't use the hashtag. And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Also, it's like 2% about the hashtag, 98% about everything else.
Yeah.
Like, it's such an irrelevant
You've never experienced it. So like, anyway, don't be too niche in what you're saying. Try to have a good balance of showing off your products and making entertaining videos that actually could entertain the masses. Look at a video and go, would my friends laugh at this? If no,
well, it needs to be relatable, doesn't it? Like, that's what keeps me hooked on TikTok, is seeing stuff and just having that little smirk of like, that's funny. Yeah. Oh, I'm like that.
Do you know what always goes viral for me? Is getting my iced coffee cup and making a joke about how Pret never has ice. And people literally comment below like, oh my God, where's this coffee cup from? Great. Yeah, shop with me. But also like, that's funny.
Yeah.
Because Pret does never have ice.
And I do feel like TikTok it doesn't like when you have a niche. Like, there's people I consistently see on my For You page, and they're always talking about slightly different things. And it's like, people care more about the, I guess, consistent person and the voice. Yeah. And actually there's so many angles you can take on it. Yeah. So what would be your one tip if you could leave people with, aside from not being so niche?
I'm going to give this tip, and I'm also going to aim it at you.
Okay, I'm ready to receive.
Just get started. There's no time like the present.
Get over yourself.
Yeah. There's no time like the present. Also, relating to what we said earlier, don't be precious about being confident. Just get over it, get involved, watch other people's things, you know, see what other people are doing and how they're coming across, and just get your face out there. Yeah. What's the worst that could happen? Like, that's why I think it's so silly that I've not been doing it, because I'm like, I mean, I know what the worst that can happen is. You can get trolled. Well, yeah, but I'm like, I'm already trolled. Yeah. So I'm like, we can't get much worse than this. I mean, we didn't touch on the trolling, but that was pretty savage. We can have a whole nother episode about trolls. That was probably part of it in my head. I'm like, oh. I'm very much like recluse now because of it, but not. Yeah, me too. You know.
It
in
changes
certain
you.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah. We talked at the very start of this episode about regret.
Yeah.
And using regret to fuel your confident action.
Yeah.
I've just remembered something. In 2019, I got an email from TikTok, and I found it the other day. It was from the UK head of TikTok. And I remember it said, "Hi, blah, blah, blah. We like your content on Instagram. We really think you'd be great on our new platform, TikTok. We'll set you up with an account. We'll help you get followers. We'll help you monetize." And I remember reading it and just laughing and being like, oh, that platform, stupid. Not going to spend my energy and time there.
Do you know what though? They are so good at doing that. They get influencers over from Instagram to that. Like the team is very, very responsive at TikTok.
Oh yeah, they were amazing. I just read it and was like, I had this thing in the back of my head when I was at the event last week and I was speaking to the TikTok people. I was like, I feel like I've spoken to one of you before. And then I searched their name in my inbox and I was like, also, honestly,
I love the TikTok. They're just so nice. The team.
I know. It was like
you don't
the
have
only
that with
regret
Instagram.
I
I'm like,
felt. I was just damn 2019 me.
I've got a TikTok secret that I can't tell you on here, but I can tell you on the thing. Yeah.
Sorry, listeners.
I know. I'm really sad that I can't talk about it, but yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's not something that's happening. It's something that's happened to me when I went to their HQ. But
Juicy got start a podcast, people. Invite Lucy on. She might tell you the secret after the episode recording. Lucy, this has been amazing. Thank you.
Thanks for
I
having
always
me.
like conversations with you. I never know where they're going to end up. They're always full of all the fun and so much wisdom and expertise. As I said, I honestly feel like this episode has just been me sat asking you the things that I really want to know. So
very welcome.
I might just never put it live and I'll just listen to it on repeat myself. I'm joking.
Get like that relaxation music that like gets you to sleep at night. It's me talking about TikTok and you're like, tomorrow I shall start.
Yes, I will not let fear get in the way. I will be consistent. I will batch record my videos. I'm going to be your second best case study.
Okay, great.
Okay.
You can do it.
Thank you.
If you don't start it by the time this goes live, I'll send you I'll send you two eye emojis in your inbox.
Yeah, I'll just look like an idiot. So that's good motivation for me, public embarrassment. I'll of course put all of your links in the show notes for people to stay connected to the books that you mentioned, to anything else that we've mentioned within this episode. I was going to bring high-low back for this episode, which if you're not a long-term listener is where we do, it's pretty logical, what's your high, what's your low. We normally do it at the very start of the episode, but we just started talking.
I've got a really good low that you're going to laugh at.
Okay,
though.
let's end with Lucy's low. Go.
So my low is that I turn up to this podcast episode a week early, and I did actually make it here today.
That's
again.
Your high.
Yeah.
Your low is that you didn't
My
turn
low
up.
is that I turned up a week ago while Alice was in Israel, and she was like, "It's next week," and I was like, "Oh, well, I've had a lovely morning walk then."
It's been a nice time in Shoreditch. Thank you very much.
My high is that I turned up this week.
I'm proud of you. I cannot tell you, there's always that panic when someone else gets something wrong, but you don't yet know that it's them that got it wrong.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I saw.
Oh, it's always me.
Oh, but I always assume it's me until I know. I never want to be that person that's like assumes it's someone else, because then you look a fool when it gets turned around on you. Like I will gather my evidence. And I saw your Instagram tag being like off to see Alice, and there I am in like an Israeli hotel room, like. I don't think you are off to see me unless you're getting on El Al Airways. And I just like quickly went through our WhatsApps and I was like, okay, no, phew, it wasn't me. So
It's always me.
I'm glad that you made it this week. Right, that's it for another episode. Thanks for listening, everybody. Come and let us know what you thought of the episode. I normally say on LinkedIn or Instagram, maybe on TikTok.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll put a clip of this episode on TikTok.
I think you should.
That would be Inception, wouldn't it?
It would. Maybe that can be your first post.
What, your face?
No, you going, I'm going to start TikTok after this episode and hold myself accountable.
Very true. Okay, I'm there. I feel like I owe you a fee after this episode. Yeah. It's been a real consulting session. Thanks for joining me.